I did not proactively seek out nor really even understand the concepts of postpartum depression and anxiety. I absolutely, in hindsight, was experiencing that. Didn't do anything. By the time I was pregnant with my first, I was pretty far along in my career. Team responsibilities, client responsibilities, travel. If I'm being honest, I think I still struggle with it. You're on your phone again, Mom. Did you even hear anything I said? 5 minutes of focused, really being there with your kid is like so much better than hours and hours of distracted playtime.
Your episode is actually going to be one of the first in the emotionally healthy postpartum series.
Nice.
So a lot of the questions I get from young moms is really tackling the systemic versus individual issue. And I'd really love to know from like a personal level, like you talk openly about Josie, right? How it's really tackling the systemic issues of parent advocacy, that this is a problem that people tackle later on. And it's very known in your website that Josie is named after your daughter, which is also your mom's name. But I'm curious from the lens, because I don't think I've heard you talk about this, from the lens of an eldest Taiwanese daughter and someone who's had a history of being high achieving. For you, why is this stage in your life, like tackling Josie, such an important issue?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's such a great question. And I actually listened to one of your episodes where you talk about
Thank
this.
you. That's so funny. We
I
both
know.
relate because we're both eldest, right? But
Totally,
I
yes.
love to hear your
Eldest
story.
daughters, yeah. Yeah, there's so many ways I could answer that. But I like the first thing that comes to mind is just it's been really like amazing to see how much I've gotten out of like building Josie and this journey that I never expected I would, including
Mm,
just this idea of like learning to like believe in myself, learning how to love myself, learning how to know that I'm good enough. It's interesting how like there are some of these things that I've struggled with for a very, very long time, how building your own company, like it's this weird, like it almost created this forcing function or dynamic that
yeah.
in order to build this thing, if I really want to keep going, I have to learn those skills.
Mm,
Because without that resilience, it's really hard in the startup world and starting a business, like if you have to build that resilience otherwise, and self-grace and like, all that,
mm-hmm,
I keep going. Because otherwise you can very quickly like spiral and burn out and,
mm.
get to a place where you can't keep going. So it's not like I intentionally, set out for that. I did not think that was part of what this was going to entail. But in the craziest of ways, it's like helped me with that.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I
so I
love
know,
that you said that.
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know if I answered your question,
You
but
did. You did because in a lot of ways, like I'm new to entrepreneurship. I told you before we started recording that I started in February, but I'm intentionally reflecting every quarter, and I'm actually going on a 4-day silent retreat at the end of this month, just to think through. I'm going with my husband, and we're basically going to talk a lot about well, we both own our own businesses, so we're both self reflecting individually together because it's a
nice.
silent retreat up
Right.
in Northern California. But it has been like a sense of self discovery for me too, like really digging into my self criticism. But
Mm,
before I go on my own soapbox, because I can go on and on about this,
I know.
for people that don't know you, you talk openly about working for like a company, being at the top in the corporate level, and then eventually coming back from your parental leave and not feeling like you were the same. Can you give people an overview of where you've come from and the genesis of the idea of Josie?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, um, like maybe many of the listeners might be able to relate. Um, I had children a little bit later once I had
Mm-hmm.
been more established in my career. And there's actually data and research that shows this general trend.
Mm-hmm.
US, the median age for first birth is a little bit higher than it used to be. It's risen over time. And actually, birth rates overall are declining, but they've actually gone up for certain age
Really?
groups. Or, yes, yes. So I don't remember the exact range, but it's like
Yeah.
older women, it's actually gone up.
Wow.
So anyways, so by the time I was pregnant with my first in 2018, I was pretty far along in my career.
Yeah.
I was in a consulting role, and it's kind of like the equivalent of like a junior partner principal type of a level where you have responsibilities for bringing in revenue, you
Mm-hmm.
have team responsibilities and managing teams, client responsibilities, travel, etc. And I had spent so much time building it before I started my family, and I had been successful. And so I really thought that I tell people a lot this story that, I had operated a certain way and had worked. And so I was very adamant about like keeping it that way after
Mm.
I went back after having my baby, because that's all I knew. And I knew it worked. And I was very type A, very in control. And I was like, I can keep doing that. It'll be, it'll be fine. And then I went back and I was like, oh my goodness, this is very different, and this is hard.
Yeah.
Um,
What was
and
hard about it? Like what
uh,
was difficult about performing at the level that you once operated in?
yeah, there's definitely the more like hard logistical challenges of like things like truly like not getting enough sleep, having to build in pumping time into your work
Yeah.
schedule, right? Especially if you're on the road, pumping in airports. This is like very common back then before they had those like pods now that you can like
Because
pump in.
you were a frequent flyer too, right? Your job required that you
It did.
traveled. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was. So there's those kinds of challenges. But then I think in another bucket of challenges was sort of just like that idea of being able to, things I'm not used to doing, ask for support, um,
Mm.
advocate for your needs, set boundaries, all these things that I've actually learned through my work in launching this company. Those were not things that I was used to doing before having a baby, because I was very prided myself on my independence.
Mm.
Maybe this kind of circles back to our eldest daughter immigrant, family.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so not knowing how to do that and just thinking I could operate how I did in the past, I think that made things really hard. And it led to feeling burnt out. It led to feelings of resentment, even though no one was really doing anything to me. I just didn't know how to ask for the support that I needed at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
So
does.
that was like some of the kind of buckets of where I struggled.
Yeah, I think I relate to that a lot. One of the things I've been reflecting on is in seasons where I felt weak, the biggest core belief that I have is that I'm a burden to the people that I love because I'm not operating in strength. I'm operating out of weakness. And I feel like I relate a lot to your story because like owning a business is like you talk about in your tech talk, no one cares about your startup. People are very concerned about um, their own interests and the mutual interests that you share with others.
Yeah.
But like it must have been really hard to shift that identity at the time. How did you work through that in that
Yeah.
stage? Yeah.
Yes. I would say very reactively, especially with my first, kind
Mm-hmm.
of taking it a day at a time and kind of just, again, trying to operate as I had in the past. So I would say not very well, but I am giving myself grace. It was my first time,
Yeah.
I was learning a lot. In my immediate team, I think there was maybe one other mom in the group. And I think that's something too that I often see is, especially with high achieving women who may be a little bit more established in their careers, on their immediate, career in their, professional settings, there may not be sort of that person they feel comfortable to lean on to have some of these conversations, or someone that they feel like
Mm.
they can relate to. And so that also, I think, was something I wish I had reflecting back. But with my second, I think I was a lot better at navigating. I think one really important thing, and relevant to especially this series, is with my first, I did not proactively seek out nor really even understand the concepts of postpartum depression and anxiety.
Wow.
And I started listening to your episode where you interviewed the two
Oh yeah,
women.
healing the
Yeah,
tigress. Yeah, Jasmine and Peggy. Mm-hmm.
so cool. And I absolutely, in hindsight, was experiencing that. Didn't do anything. Didn't even really like have the language or even know what it was in that first pregnancy and
Yeah.
return. I got much smarter about it. For my second, I did actually proactively talk to my OBGYN about it, and that was so helpful. It made a huge difference.
Mm.
And I think that helped me a lot with more smoothly navigating that second leave because I looked for that support more proactively.
Yeah. There's so many there's so many themes in your story about age. There's themes
Mm-hmm.
about presence. And then I'd really love to go into paternal mental health because I feel like that's something that so many of us don't talk about in the postpartum space. But
Mm-hmm.
transitioning in your TED talk, you talk so much about the relevance of staying present, but the difficulty of being a high achieving working woman who has a startup. You talk about going to your daughter's it was it a birthday party
It
on the
was like
TED
a
talk?
dumpling making party.
Dumpling making party, yes. And then you talk about like, did I answer that email? Did I do this? Did I do that? Right? Like the repercussions of postpartum anxiety and depression is you feel like you're going at it alone. But what I appreciate about you, Michelle, is that you vocalize so many of your internal struggles. And I'm curious about like the practice of presence and like really being with your children and being with yourself. I feel like is work that you're continuing to do now. Like,
Yeah.
what advice would you give perhaps the new mom that's listening to this podcast and going, I don't know how to navigate work and family. What would you
Yeah.
say to them?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, that you are not alone and it's so normal. So give yourself grace. I think it's so funny. We were talking to a group of employees just before this
Yeah.
recording. It's a parent and caregiver community built at
Yeah.
this employer. And we actually talked about this exact topic, about how sometimes just acknowledging that we've gone through this identity shift, right, is really important.
Mm.
It's huge. It's not just a logistical change. It's not just a change in like how things are operating, but you've actually gone through an identity shift in your life.
Yes.
That's a big deal. And so just like acknowledging that is important. And then the other thing we talked about is really not trying to define success either the way it used to be or compared to somebody else's definition of success.
Wow.
Defining it for yourself. We talked about that. And I think I still struggle with that sometimes. Like I said, I really tried to operate how I did before because I was successful that way. Um, and
What
if I
is
didn't,
success to you now, though? Like,
I know that is
yeah.
such a good question, right? And defining it, because defining it for ourselves is so important and not somebody else's definition of what that
Yes.
is. And so, I think at this point in my journey and having gone through building Josie, especially, and everything I've learned through the process is, I think there's many different parts to that answer, but I think one is, being able to be present when I'm at work and then when I'm at home, being able to show myself kindness and grace. That's, I
Mm.
think, now a part of my success and being happy with who I am and recognizing that I have value. I think that's part of what is now success versus what it was before, which is very much defined by external things,
Yeah.
someone else thinks I'm good enough versus me thinking I'm good enough. I think
Mm.
that's probably one of the biggest shifts in how I think about what that looks like now.
Yeah. I recently finished taking an advanced perinatal mental health training. And
Nice.
one of the things that I've been really tackling, which I feel like you're in the position to answer, is motherhood brings about so much personal self awareness, but we also tackle the systemic issue of how motherhood is getting pushed aside and fatherhood is getting pushed aside at the risk of hurry and success and all of these external validations associated with capitalism. I'm curious about like what it is about Josie that you hope to tackle systemically in the work that you're doing. What's not talked about paternally and maternally in our society?
Oh my gosh. It's such a great question. And And there's a number of different things, but I would say what I love about our work is that we do get to work with organizations and tackle
Yeah.
systemic change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the not so secret things about Josie and our mission is um, first of all, I want to say and acknowledge that there are challenges for both birthing and non-birthing parents, fathers,
Mm-hmm.
mothers, etc., and all need support. What I see a lot in the data, and this is part of the impetus of launching Josie, is that it does disproportionately affect women and women of color, particularly when you become a mother,
Mm-hmm.
career trajectory, and the ability to advance in those careers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I see happening often is you have women leaving the workforce, and then that then leads to a broken leadership pipeline. And then you have the same people making the decisions over and over again in terms of things like, do we have paid parental leave? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that cycle continues unless you're able to actually keep people in these roles that understand and can empathize with the experience and feel supported so that they can get to a place where they can become a leader at these organizations. So what was really important to me in terms of Josie and our mission was being able to give people the tools to be able to then continue in their careers in a sustainable way, because we need them in leadership positions. We need
Yeah.
parents in leadership positions. They bring so many unique skills to the table. So being able to partner with organizations has been incredible. I would say one of the things that really does start to change the narrative and start to at least start to tackle some of the more systemic things is ensuring that people who have managerial responsibilities at organizations have the training and the tools to understand some of these challenges, and just even being able to show up for team members in the right way,
Mm-hmm.
being able to have a lot of what you talk about in your podcast, is
Mm-hmm.
I wish that people leaders were all mandatory. You got to listen to this and the challenges. And then
Yeah.
here's some things that you can do to show up for your team members, because that's what's going to start really changing culture in your organization. And but what we don't talk about a lot is a lot of people rise to manager and leadership roles because they have the hard skills. They met their numbers, and that's great, wonderful. But we don't then equip them with the training and the tools to actually lead people, who are human, who have lives outside of work,
Yeah.
So I think that gets missed a lot. And the one other thing I'll mention to your question is we don't talk enough, I think, about fathers taking leave.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I like to use in terms of language too is start talking about leave as parental leave versus maternity versus paternity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think, and I'm seeing this more and more in organizations, is ensuring that fathers take leave as well. And systemically, I'm seeing organizations adopt policies to make those leaves equal. Which is really cool to see when that happens, because there's so many implications when the father takes leave when it comes to not only their own health and the baby's health and bonding with the baby, but also for their partner's career, and also signaling to other people at their organization that it's okay to do that. And that caregiving as an identity is absolutely can be part of a father's identity as much as it is for traditionally more a mother's identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that too is something that I think is not talked about enough, but we need to acknowledge that it's important and encourage it, because there still exists a stigma, a little bit of you're not as committed if you take your leave, which is not true at all.
Yeah, what I loved about I saw your post on LinkedIn about paternity leave, about how often you hear fathers getting put down for needing more time with their child.
Yeah.
Because I live in Los Angeles, I hear about extended paternity leave a lot. So I was actually surprised, to be honest with you, about how that stigma is so present in corporations and, in systems of power. And I'm curious about what you've heard and why you think it's continuing to be a problem.
Yeah. Yes. I think part of it is, of course, also that what I mentioned earlier about, the same people, leadership pipeline, and kind of the cyclical thing of having, folks who get into leadership positions who may not have that lived experience. But I think you're right. It is it varies a lot by geography, especially now that states are starting to launch paid family leave policies, which even having the policy in place, right, removes a little bit of the stigma. We've made that consistent expectation for everyone that lives here, right? So I think that leads to geographic variance. And then it depends on the industry too. I think I've seen, certain industries adopt this more and be more open to embracing that leave and destigmatizing it. Like technology companies are known for, although some are scaling back, but having good benefits, having that leave time off so that people can take it and making that equal, right, for both fathers and birthing and non-birthing, I should say. But in healthcare, which is an industry that we work with very closely at Josie, there's still very much, these outdated notions that you leave for a few days and you come back. And it's tricky, right? Because there's a patient panel that you have that, and there's truly like, there's lives at stake potentially, depending, like what your specialty and like where you work, truly. And so I think some of it is industry dependent. Some of it is, just the culture of the company. Some of it's geography. But the good news is I see it all starting to shift in the right direction.
Yeah, that's so true because it is occupation dependent as well. Like I think about some of my therapist friends who've had to take leave and the amount of concern that they have for the individual and the person and the personal pressures that they put on themselves. How is it making change now? Like, what have you seen within the healthcare system that's beginning to shift?
Yeah. So I think something that's really encouraging is more than 50% of medical trainees now are women. And so I know. And so what does that mean? That means that and couple that with the fact that there's just a general shortage of labor when it comes to the healthcare space. And now it's kind of forcing this conversation where systems are saying, oh, we need to make sure we can retain these people. Right? And we have to start paying attention to some of the needs, right, that maybe in the past didn't come up as often or weren't vocalized for whatever reason. And that means that our systems and our operations and our policies need to start evolving if we want to keep people in the workforce. So that is something that I am starting to see specifically in the healthcare space is many systems are now launching what's called these well-being divisions. And what's encouraging is it's not just lip service at many of these organizations. They have real budgets. They have real executive leaders with decision-making power who are invested in protecting physician burnout, frontline provider burnout, giving them tools, giving them access to resources so that they can navigate these big life events like leave or whatever it may be. And so that is encouraging to see.
Yeah. I realized there was one question I forgot to ask you about there's a gap in our story now about being a partner and then starting Josie. Tell me about what happened in the middle after you gave birth to Josie, because you have Theo and you have Josie as well. Like what happened? Like how did Josie become a company?
Yeah. I love that you said that. I often joke, like when people ask me how Josie is doing, I'm like, oh, do you mean, I'll joke, I'll be like, well, one's growing really well and the other isn't. And I'll leave it up to you to figure out which one's which. But you're right. There was a gap. There was, so Josie, my daughter, was born in 2020. Josie, the company, wasn't born until mid 2022. So there was a gap. And actually the idea for Josie, the company, the seed was planted in my head in 2018 after my first was born. So it was a while before I made that switch. And I think what drove that, there's a couple of things. One is just pure like time. It had been like almost 5 years I'd been thinking about this. And I'm like, clearly it's not leaving me, right? Like I'm still thinking about it. So clearly I'm passionate about, supporting. And And then finding a co-founder that believed in me and wanted to start this with me, that was also huge in getting me over the hump of feeling like, oh my gosh, this is a big risk to start my own business.
Mm.
Very different from a corporate life. And so that really helped and kind of gave me a little boost in like confidence to kind of just go for it.
Mm.
So those were a couple of things that drove it. And I'm so glad I did. It's been such a fun journey, but yes, as a risk averse person, it wasn't like a quick decision.
Yeah, you really took your time, but um, I took a class with one of my mentors. He's an artist named James Victori, and one of the things he said is that um, art will wait for your genius if you're willing to take the plunge. And I I wanted to ask you this because, like, in your TED talk, you talk a lot about being 40, and you read Forbes 40 under 40, and you were like, oh, that's really cool, right? Like Sarah Blakely, 40 under 40, for example.
Yeah.
Like, starting a company in your 40s
Yeah.
comes with a lot of risk, but it kind of, I saw an Instagram post
Mhm.
6 months ago that said that the average entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, starts a company in her late 30s, early 40s.
Oh,
And so the career
okay.
pivot comes a lot later, but like as you grapple with age and starting something new, like I noticed that whenever we talk or I ask you a question, there's so much joy and vibrancy in what you do and how you do Josie, right? But where does that come from? And how do you cultivate a sense of belief in yourself when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny that you shared that Instagram post because it made me think back. It made me think about how I wonder, for so many women, right? Like it feels like you hear that stat about how you like have to like you have to prove yourself and like have all this evidence of your value and
Mm,
do something before you try the next thing, right? Like this idea that I would never go for a promotion until like I am operating at like the next level and maybe even beyond.
mm,
Like this like kind of this idea that like needing that to build our confidence to get to the point where we're ready for the next thing. And I wonder if that stat of women starting these things a little bit later, that's a piece of it. Just I know for me, like getting to a point in my life where I felt more comfortable in my own skin, more confident in my story, more confident in my value, right? And then needing that first because I couldn't even imagine having started something, any time before I started Josie, like I wouldn't, oh, I had to do 15 years of corporate experience and multiple promotions and like multiple
yeah,
clients before I even was like, okay, maybe I could do this.
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but, oh my gosh, now I'm like forgetting your original question.
No,
It's
like
like,
the cultivation of belief in
oh
yourself,
yes, right.
being at a quote later stage as a woman,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
feeling like you're entering into a second stage in your career, right? Because you started out in corporate as opposed to just being a serial entrepreneur, like most stories out
exactly.
there.
Yep,
Yeah.
15 years in corporate.
Hmm.
So it's such a really, really good question. And if I'm being honest, I think I still struggle with it, some
Mm.
days, like, am I so crazy to have done this? What was I thinking? Why me, kind of thing. I still
Yeah.
struggle with that, and I think that it's okay. It's normal. And I think I've adopted some tools to mitigate that a bit now. Um, but I think probably like the most important thing that I've probably come to realize, and I shared this, I think, a little bit up top at the beginning of our discussion too, is just really this core belief that you are validated internally and that you believe in yourself. And as long as that's true, and that you find your own work valuable and that you believe in that, then you're already there. It's like it's
Mm.
truly that shift from the external versus the internal validation. And if you can cultivate that ability to really validate yourself internally and be okay with yourself and really like let that be your gauge, I think
Mm-hmm.
that then comes with a more natural joy in what you do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is like looking for some external thing, which is so easy in new
Yeah.
business, right? Oh, which VC firm is going to reach out to me next? Or like, oh, what revenue figure am I going to hit? Or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the extra, it's so easy to get sucked up in all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. As a
yeah, that can suck your
therapist,
joy. That can suck your joy. That right there.
it can suck your joy. Like in the therapy space, like the more products you're able to provide for clients, the better business revenue you can have. Because, but I've noticed that creating a lot more vertical products actually distracts me from the real clinical work. And I
Yeah.
heard I was listening to a podcast with John Ortberg, who's like a Christian spiritual writer. He said that how you see people is a habit. If you see them as a means to an end, that is a habitual thought that you constantly have. And
Mm,
I love how the shift you've created is more about meaning and really taking your time, because like 4 years in a company is already a huge accomplishment, right? Like
super
the
safe.
ability to keep going, but consistency over time is something I'm still learning and pacing myself with. But 4 years into Josie, like how have you been personally reformed? Like going back from the top of our conversation, you said that it's really been a learning experience for you.
Yeah, it has, in so many ways. And it really truly has been such a fun and amazing journey. But so one of them, of course, is that more internal, just learning to love myself, learning to see value in my story, learning to see value in what I do. I also think it really unlocked a creative side of me that
Mm,
maybe was untapped,
yeah.
or maybe just waiting to come out,
Oh,
I
it's always there. Yeah.
was always there. I think it was always there. And in my corporate experience, for whatever reason, just, that maybe there just wasn't, enough opportunities for it, or I
Yeah.
like very unintentionally or not even knowing kept it to the side because of what I did. Um, and doing this has sort of unlocked like this whole world of like, just getting to be creative. And I
Mm.
love that part of what we do at Josie. And it's so funny because I realized, because I was like corporate consultant, I said this in my TED talk too, very like
Yes.
buttoned up like before I launched Josie. And I remember the first few years of launching the company, or the first year or so, I would say, very like operated the same way, like let's keep it super professional, let's make all these slides, like da 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 da.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like I feel like we're so much more able to, resonate with clients, win business, etc., when we actually can just be more authentic and more creative with our voice, and
Mm.
just approach things a little bit differently. It has just opened up so many more doors for us than like the way I was thinking about in the past, which was like a very more sort of like traditional way of doing things. And this has to happen before this and whatnot. And I think that's the
Mm.
beauty of starting a business, is you get to kind of like experience that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so that has been a really great learning experience and has been so much fun.
Yeah. I relate to that a lot. It's when
Yeah.
you're an employee of a larger structure, your mindset is how do I make things super excellent out of my own personal self? But then when you have a business, you're serving the end user or the customer, and you really have to put yourself in their shoes of how can I be more intentional with this person or this organization in front of me? But I'm also curious about how, blending all of your different identities
Mm.
together, how being a mom has shaped that learning experience of being so, exploratory, having two young kids.
Yeah, yes. It definitely has helped shape that. And I learned a lot from my kids too, like there's
Oh,
something really special about children, and just like there are no boundaries. Like the world is, anything,
wow.
like your oyster. Like you can truly like, like let your imaginations run wild and just have fun.
Mm,
And I love that about them. And I think in many ways, it has encouraged me to also, push boundaries too in my own work and get creative, seeing that they do that as well, trying to bring that into the home too, because I want them to be creative people and to like really like embrace that part of them, and if they see their mom
Mm.
too, I think that's a lot of fun. So,
Oh.
yeah, they're very inspirational. They're also very annoying. I don't want to and they're great. And
And it's not always easy.
and
Yeah.
it's not always easy.
Yeah. I'm curious about like being the CEO of a company and being a mom. Like, what does your day typically look like in trying to navigate different responsibilities?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, very transparently, one, I have a partner who is very, very much involved in
Mm,
caregiving and supportive, and both at home and also with my work.
beautiful.
So, that I'm so grateful for, really grateful for. It
Mm,
took work, it took communication, it took understanding and patience, but I have that. And I don't know if I could do it without him.
mhm.
Um, the other piece is I do work from home most of the time, and
Oh,
that
good.
is very helpful, particularly in navigating what is now 1,000 days off of school in a year. I know the math doesn't math, but it's true. Okay. It's 1,000.
And you're
Um,
referring to summer vacation, right? Yeah.
well, at summer and no, even when the school year starts. There are so many days off. There are so many days off. And so both. And so I think that is helpful in navigating the day to day. And I think, all the things that you would think about, right? Like making sure you have good systems in place,
Mm,
making sure that, I do have routines, that's important to me.
yeah.
And being able to do that, making sure I build in time to take care of myself so that I have the energy to both be the mom I want to be when they get home and the CEO that I want to be when I need to be the CEO. And so
Mm,
I have systems, I have routines, I have a partner that's supportive, I work from home. Um, and so I think those are like some of the things that have really helped me in navigating truly what is, quite a juggle. And here's the other thing I'll also say. We talk a lot about prioritization, right? Like what's
yeah.
important to you. And I think, of course, that's really, really important. And I don't hesitate to say this, and I'm very open about it, but like I am 100% like that person that if something's important to me at work and it might mean missing like a kid thing, like that's okay. Like I'm normal
Mm.
that, like I'm gonna be honest, I've been to a lot of my kids' plays at school. A lot. They're literally up there for 10 seconds and it's really cute and I love it and I always enjoy it. But if I have to miss one because there's a really cool work opportunity, I'll
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
I don't
But
have to feel like I'm in all these places because I know, what's
yes.
important.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm actually reading this book. I have this habit of taking the book cover off. If you're watching on
Oh,
YouTube, I just find it very annoying. But it's called "Being There" by Erica Commissar, who's a licensed clinical social worker. Really excellent book. But she says that like rupture and repair in any parent-child relationship is normal, and that it's the repair that matters most. And
yeah.
if a mom is willing to be present with her child and work things out, it's okay. But having a healthy sense of identity is so important, right? And I love that you're open to the flexibility of it. And selfishly, I think it's helpful for me to conceptualize like what's a really healthy routine and schedule as a
Yeah.
mom, you know?
and
Yeah.
and a therapist and
Yes.
all the other identities and a partner and all the other identities that you have, right?
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
okay. And also, I think you said presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we've lost the narrative a bit in parenting because we want to be in all these different places at once that we're not
Mm-hmm.
even enjoying the moments that we get to be with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing about that 10-second play, right, or whatever, is like if I'm like squeezing that in between 1,000 other things that I'm supposed to be doing, like I'm not even really enjoying it because I'm like not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so much better if like I'm able to choose the things that matter and truly know that I can be present in those things. That's way better than getting to every single thing that you could possibly do, right? Um,
Mm.
And we always say too, like 5 minutes of focused, really being there with your kid is like so much better than hours and hours of distracted like playtime, right? Or being
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's just important for parents to remember that like you're doing the best you can, and um, being able to be present is so much better than the quantity of time and things that you could be doing.
Yes. I think that like so much of the narrative now with presence is like I have to take away all of the things that I love in order to be
Right.
with you. But it's like even if you take those things away, it's not going to stop you from it's not going to help you play soccer with your kid. It's not going to help you
No,
go
you're
to the
thinking
park with
all those
them.
things.
Yeah. But it's
Oh, true.
also like the action matters more. The presence is felt more when you are actually skin to skin, like face to face with a child. And it is true that a child can feel whether or not you enjoy time with them or
Yeah,
that you
they
feel like you have
sense
to be
it.
there. Mm-hmm.
They sense it. My
Yeah.
son called me out the other day, and they'll call you out as they get
Yes.
older. My
Yeah.
son is like, "You're on your phone again, mom. Did you even hear anything I said?" I'm like, "Oh
Oh
no!" I'm
my
like,
gosh.
You're right.
That's so true. Michelle, there's this old video that my dad found of me telling him a story of me watching this. I think it was like a fairy tale thing. And he was on the camera, like filming, and he was looking at the screen. I was like, can you look me in the eye? You're not even looking me in the eye. You're not even talking to me. You're not even asking me questions. I was like, you have to talk to me. And then I was like, wow, like, I was so
Wow.
sassy, but it was like I felt it so immediately. But my mom always used to say growing up, like, children don't know how to lie or to hide things from you. They learn that over time. And it's such a gut reaction to communicate needs as a child,
Mhm.
you know? But
Yep.
um, I love
Love
that.
that. I love that. Great too. Do you know how old you were? Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
was like 3 or 4
Oh my
at the time.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I love that.
How old
Oh
is
my.
Theo now?
So Theo's
2018, 6?
eight,
8.
eight now. 8 now.
Oh,
The
I
little
didn't
one
do
is
the
six.
math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have six and
Okay.
eight. 6 and 8. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, they'll call you out. They'll call you out. They're watching you.
How different are they in personality?
Oh, oh, there's similarities and differences.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, they're both like super goofy and silly and funny and just, outgoing.
Yeah.
Um, I would say it's kind of like I hate to stereotype, but it's like your classic first, second child.
Oh, okay.
Very, very much so. In that the
Wow.
first, like, he's like super, like, he'll listen to us and he's very like by the book and very like, by the rules. And like, he'll tell on his sister when, he sees something wrong. And then she's just wild. She's wild. There's no rules. She does what she wants. She's like very independent. Like it's just very like classic first second, Uh,
Yeah. That's so
but it's
beautiful.
cute to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle, I want to be respectful of your time because it is
Oh my. Yes.
11:01 on my time, but I just wanted to say thank you and the joy and love that you bring to your work, to motherhood, to partnership, to everything is just, it's a gift. So thank you for
Oh my
being on the show.
gosh. Thank you for saying that. No, thank you for the
Yeah.
conversation and inviting me to be a guest on your amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, and I definitely am happy to do it. And yes, if you need anything from me that we didn't get to today, let me know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely let's stay in touch, and I would love to, yes,
Yes.
support you in your work.
Perfect.